But of course, this is from C.S. Lewis's Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe. And the clip gives us a great picture of some spiritual realities. And if you know C.S. Lewis, you know that was largely his intention in writing many of his books. But what I love about this clip of Narnia, Chronicles of Narnia, is that the kids are in trouble. What you don't see is how the stained glass window gets broken. They're outside playing cricket, and if you know anything about cricket, then you know you don't know anything about cricket. It's one of those games Americans cannot figure out. But Peter's bowling or pitching the ball to Edmund, and he hits it, and it breaks the stained glass window. So where the clip picks up, they're looking at the mess they're in, and they're in trouble, and they hear the housekeeper is coming, and so they take off running, and they're trying to escape judgment, so to speak, because the housekeeper is not going to be pleased with what's happened. So they're running through the house, and they're trying all these doors, and all these doors are locked. Every way they turn is a dead end until the one door that's open, and then they find the wardrobe. And then when they step through the wardrobe door, right, they enter this whole other world, this whole other realm of Narnia. And what they learn after they begin their adventure in Narnia and they're there for a while, and what they discover is that what is going on in Narnia is huge. It's epic. The battle that is going on there is even bigger than the battle that's going on in the other realm, which is pretty big because it's World War II. That's a pretty big, bad, ugly situation that's going on in their physical reality. But in Narnia, they're talking about eternal winter. If you remember, it's always winter and never Christmas, right? It's eternal winter. It's the white witch that has usurped the authority and taken over the kingdom. And she's keeping everyone miserable. And Aslan is waiting, the lion, the rightful king of the kingdom is waiting to return. It's huge. It's huge. What was going on in Narnia was actually a bigger battle than what was going on in the other realm. And that's the way it is for us too. There's this spiritual realm that is so much bigger and so far beyond our physical reality. And I have these nifty visual aids today. I apologize for the low-tech nature of my visual aids. I've been very stressed out lately, and I had no printer ink last night, I discovered. You will observe my visual aid, and you will understand that the P represents the physical reality in which we live. No. Very good. You just made my point. The S is the spiritual realm, and the P is our physical reality, which is a very, very small part of a larger whole, isn't it? You got that? Got that, Peggy? I'm just going to put this up here because I worked so hard on it. I would like you guys to be able to access that throughout the lesson. Okay. So my P, say, is here. I have a friend in India that I met when we went to a ladies' conference there. She lives at the base of the Himalayas, serving Jesus there. Her P is probably somewhere over here. My Messianic friends in Israel, their P is probably somewhere over here. Your guys' P is probably somewhere around my P because we share a lot of commonalities. We all live in America. We all live on the Central Coast. We all go to ABC, whatever. Our physical circumstances, though all unique to each one of us, share some common things. Our P's are probably nearby. The point being that wherever your P is, wherever your physical reality is, it's a very, very small part of a great, big, giant spiritual realm. Last week we talked about how the matrix, which is our physical reality, tries to trick us into thinking that it's all there is. And I was thinking yesterday, I'm like, you know how stupid that actually is? That is as stupid as our little moon. Like if our little moon, our little rock that circles the earth, tried to tell us that there was no universe. Our goofy little moon that seems to serve, to the non-scientists, doesn't seem to serve a whole lot of purpose. We know it does, but it's circling our Earth, which is circling our sun, which is one of a gazillion stars in our galaxy, which is one of a million galaxies in the universe. If our moon tried to say, there really isn't a universe, there really isn't a universe, how ridiculous would that be? But that's what the matrix tries to do. That's what this world, what this life tries to do. It tries to tell us that nothing else matters. There isn't anything else. Remember our first week together, and I quoted that infamous boot guy, the boot repair guy, that said, we're not physical beings having an occasional spiritual experience with God. We're spiritual beings having a physical, temporary life on earth. We're having a temporary life experience. This thing is bugging me. Is that okay? Can you still hear me? So we're spiritual beings. We were created spiritual beings. God put eternity in our hearts. And so this is all just temporary. Right? What's our verse? 2 Corinthians 4:18. So we do not focus on what is seen, but on what is unseen. For the seen is temporary, but the unseen is eternal. So we're all spiritual beings. We're all spiritual beings. And within the realm of the spiritual, which is where we all live, there are two existences. There are two dwelling places, two habitations. And it's one or the other. So you will observe my next visual aid. And I had some fun doing this. Embracing my inner artist, you can clearly see. What we have here is the spiritual realm. And there are two places within which we can dwell. Obviously, one side is death, represented by the Z for zombie. Look at all those zombies that live on that side. Okay? Zombies. And then look on the other side. Life. The tree of life is there. The water is there. Do you see the bread? It's more like a piece of toast. This is the best I could do. I could do the tree okay, but, I can't do the bread, obviously. And look at all of those happy Christians. They're happy. We're happy, right? Christians are happy because look where we live. We get to live on the side with the tree and the water and all the light and the yummy toast. Those of you who don't do carbs, you're missing out on toast. Just say. Okay, and you'll notice there's a door in between, isn't there? There's a door in between. And right now, that door is open. It matters which side of the door we're on, doesn't it? Clearly. It matters which side of the door. This is my family down here, by the way. This is my Asian husband. And that's me, and those are my two lovely kids who are now 18 and 21. I used to sign all my birthday cards from us like that, with just the little picture of our family. Anyway, one side, obviously death, darkness, despair. The other side, light, life, restoration, and all of those good things. It matters which side of the door we're on. God gives us some pretty cool pictures of this whole idea of the door and which side of the door we're on. The first time you'll see it is in Genesis 6 with Noah. I don't know if you guys saw the movie. I haven't seen it. I heard it really wasn't probably worth the money. In the biblical account, Noah builds his ark under God's direction, and then on the appointed day, they all go in, and God shuts the door, right? And those who are on the inside, on that side of the door, means life. They live. But those on the outside of the door means their death. Another place we find it is in Exodus chapter 12 with the Passover. And you guys probably all know the story. The Israelites are in bondage and God is going to rescue them. He's going to visit judgment on Egypt, and he's going to do it through these plagues. And the last plague is going to be the worst, and it's going to mean the death of the firstborn. From the highest echelons of power, the Pharaoh, all the way down to the livestock. The firstborn is going to die. But Israel is told by God to take their lamb, kill the lamb, and wipe the blood on the door, right? And then they go inside, and whoever is on the inside, behind the door with the blood, will live. The angel of death will pass over those homes with the blood on the door. But those on the wrong side of the door, or a door without the blood, will experience the death of the firstborn. So it matters which side of the door you're on. And then Jesus tells us in Matthew 25 the parable of the 10 virgins. And he says that in the end, it's going to be like 10 maidens waiting for the bridegroom to come. And he's going to be a long time in coming, and everybody's going to get tired of waiting, and they're going to fall asleep. But then they're going to hear the trumpet, and they're going to wake up, and 5 of them are going to go, oh, wait, I'm not ready. 5 of them aren't going to be ready, and 5 of them are going to be ready. And the 5 that aren't ready are going to have to run and scramble and get their act together and get the oil for their lamps. And while they're busy doing that, he's going to come. And the 5 that are ready are going to go with him into the wedding feast. And what's going to happen? He's going to shut the door. And when those other 5 get it together and they come and they're knocking on the door, and he's going to say, sorry, I don't know you. Everybody I know is already inside. Everybody I know is already on this side of the door. So you're just going to have to go away. I don't know you. And then in Luke 13, Jesus says, we enter the kingdom through the narrow door. It matters which side of the door we're on. So we've come to our third I am statement. I am the door. It's a third metaphor. And in John 10, Jesus is explaining again the spiritual concept with a physical idea, using something in the physical to explain the spiritual. Now, he does it in the context of sheep and shepherds, which even for those of us who say we live in the country, right? There's probably a lot there that we don't get because we're city people at heart. But the idea of the door, of course we can get that, right? I mean, we all come in and out of doors all day long. We've got side doors and front doors and back doors and sliding doors and patio doors and French doors and Dutch doors and, right, garage doors, and we get the idea of the door. At my house, we have a front door and a back door, and the only people that come to the front door is UPS and the Jehovah's Witnesses come and leave their little tracts at the front door. Everybody comes in the back door, and that back door gets slammed all the time, and it's right underneath my bedroom. So teenagers, especially in the summer, in and out, in and out, in and out, slamming that door, waking me up, making me happy, so happy. Christians are happy people, happy, because we're on the right side of the door. Anyway, we get the concept of the door, and Jesus is using this idea to explain the spiritual. And so he sets up the analogy for us in the beginning of John 10, And basically the sheep, that's us. We're going to look at that in more detail in 2 weeks when we get to the sheep and the shepherd. I'm the good shepherd. But for now, we're the sheep. The sheep pen, if you will, the fold, at the beginning of the chapter is death. Okay? And on the outside of the sheep pen of death would be life. Right. Easy. We're the sheep. We're trapped in death. He's going to lead us out through the door into life. So he's the door out of death. But he's the door in as well, right? And he says in John 10:9, whoever enters through me will be saved. And to enter is a metaphor for the act of faith. It's believing in Jesus. Just like to eat the bread of life was to believe, and to see the light of the world is to understand. You see how these are all, do you see how these are all connected? Isn't this cool how these are all connected? He's saying the same thing, he's just saying it in several different ways. To enter is a metaphor for the act of faith. Now enter through me, so faith in me, and you will be saved. And it's important to note that in the Greek, the saved is in the passive voice, which means sheep don't save themselves. Which, if you know anything about sheep, you know that that's probably true, right? If there's any saving of any sheep happening, it's on the part of the shepherd, not on the part of the sheep. They must enter, the sheep must enter and have faith, but they must have faith that the shepherd is saving them. It's on the shepherd. It's all on the shepherd. So he says, we will be saved, but saved from death. Yeah. I came that they might have life and have it to the full. So he doesn't say, I'm saving you from death. He's not that direct. But conversely, he says, I'm saving you for life. I'm saving you to life. I came to give you life. So it matters that we walk through that door in faith and we get to the other side. So last week we looked at the light of the world, and we saw that there was a twofold meaning or two facets to that statement, that we needed life, and light gives life. And we also needed to know and to see that we have purpose, which is to be the light of the world. So, to have life, to see that we're dead, to see that we are to be the light of the world. And the door metaphor has a couple of layers to it also. And the first would be to have life, enter through me and live. And the second would be to understand our purpose. In the homework we talked about being open doors. The door there being a metaphor for opportunity or access. So when we're open doors, we're providing opportunity and access to Jesus for the zombies that are stuck over here. And they need to know about the door, and they need to know about life, and they need to know about Jesus. So we want to be open doors in that sense, in leading them to Jesus. So he's the door out of death, and he's the door in to life. And so he's the revolving door, isn't he? In and out, in and out, in and out. And embedded in this door metaphor is this idea. And in the homework we looked at, and here's your blanks, into life and out of death, or say, into freedom, out of bondage to sin, or into peace and out of fear. And you could have a lot of fun with this, just figuring out and acknowledging and pondering what he's brought you out of and what he's led you into. Right? Maybe it's out of illness or disease or sickness and into health. That could be spiritually, physically, emotionally. Maybe out of discouragement or depression and into joy. I mean, all of us have a story there to tell. He's brought us out of something. For me, I could say he's brought me out of like legalism of my own making and into freedom. Out of works mentality and into grace. So next time you're stuck somewhere with nothing to do or think about, because I'm sure that happens all the time, think through that and think, what has he brought me out of? And what can I praise him for? What he's led me into. But I think there's another layer here too for us with the in and out. And I heard of a church in the Midwest, and some of you may be familiar with this. I'm sure this isn't the only church that has ever done this. But over their main doors into their sanctuary, they have a sign that says, enter to worship. So into worship. And then on the inside, as you go back out through those same doors, it says out to service. So into worship, out to service. And I love that because I love those two ideas, those two categories of service and worship. And I think that particularly timid sheep like me, I don't know if you've picked this up in my writing, but I kind of see myself as a little lammy that's sort of like, I don't know what I'm supposed to be doing or where I'm supposed to be going or whatever. Afraid of my own shadow most of the time. Timid sheep like me would prefer to stay in the fold 24/7, right? And study and read and write and worship and learn and journal. And my kids call me a hobbit. I'm a hobbit. Not because I have unusually large feet, okay? I'm a size 7, like most people my height. It's all good. But I love to just sit in my dining room, which has kind of become my study with my books. And on a cold day, I've got a big thing of hot chocolate with the whipped cream all the way to the moon. And I just can study and drink it in and just look out in the Shire and, just stay there with God. And especially in this new season for me with both my kids in college. And so I have a lot of time to quiet. And hobbits love their own company best, right? They just do. Because it's just safe and it's not messy. It's confined and it's just predictable. It's just predictable. I love that. But my shepherd doesn't want me to stay in the fold 24/7, as rich and as meaningful and as awesome as it is for me. He has places he wants to take me, other pastures that I need to go to, where I can exercise my faith and I can express these things that he's filled me up with when I'm in the fold, where I can actually trust him for something, where I need him to show up from time to time. And so some of us need, and maybe I'm the only one, but some of us need to be led out. We need to be led out. Some of us need to be forced out sometimes. Sometimes it's the staff with the big curly Q on the end and I'm getting my little tushy spanked to get out of the fold. It's time to go out into pastures that might be scary, might be risky. But I'm not going alone. The shepherd's leading me there. He's leading me out of the fold. Well, conversely, there are sheep, which, the timid little whatever sheep in me would say, there's also those reckless and careless and overconfident sheep that like to be out in the pasture all the time, right? which maybe they're just overly zealous, not overly zealous, maybe they're just zealous and passionate and driven, and they see all kinds of things they can do for the Lord. And they're out in the pastures all the time. This is my husband. And to use my Lord of the Rings analogy, it's like I married Gandalf the Grey sometimes, the wizard out there slaying the dragons. And what in the world a hobbit is doing married to a wizard? It's the question of the century at my house. Like, we're so mismatched. Why are we even together? He's got a lot he's trying to do. He's got a lot of ideas and a lot of vision and he wants to take Jesus to a lot of people. And he has to be forced back in. He has to be led back in sometimes. Some of us need to be led in to quietness and worship and meditation and prayer and that filling. Some of us don't like to sit still long enough to listen for God because we've got stuff to do. We've got a lot of stuff to do. And we're burning daylight out there. And you want me to just sit here and study? That doesn't seem productive. So some of us need to be led back in. And sometimes we're forced back in, and maybe it's through circumstances or burnout or exhaustion or failure. Failure is not necessarily a bad thing. That's what he tells me. The Hobbit doesn't think failure is not a bad thing. But actually, when you think about it, if we're out there taking risks for Jesus, for the kingdom, leveraging physical circumstances to advance a spiritual agenda, even a failure per se can be used for the glory of God. It can be used to advance the spiritual. It's the matrix that tells us that we can't fail. Failure is all bad. But if we're taking some risks out there in the pasture with our shepherd, it's not always going to go how we think it'll go. And that's okay. Sometimes, though, that's what he uses to bring us back in, so that we will sit still for a little while, so that we will get filled up, so that we will study and pray and listen when it's not natural for us to do that. So some of us need to be led out, some of us need to be led in, and I think we're all prone to one or the other, with, various shades of gray on that continuum, but we're all prone to one or the other, but we all need both, don't we? We need both. We need the quiet times where he's filling us and we are sitting and listening. But we also need to go. We need to go out, make disciples. That's relationships. That can be messy. We need to go into dark places and be light. That can be scary. We need to find people that we can engage, where we can express our faith outwardly, like we talked about last week. Outwardly expressing our faith through love and through service. So we need both. And I think that's why the book of Hebrews tells us to both go within the veil, but then later he tells us to go outside the camp. So go within the veil, find mercy, find healing, find hope, and then go outside the camp and do your job, which is being light in a dark place, making disciples, expressing your faith outwardly through love and service. So he's the door out of death. He's the door into life. He's a revolving door. And I think he's a door in between also. And last week I was talking about the tension between this physical, this small p, and this big S. And this tension of feeling like we're going back and forth. Like sometimes we're there. We're all about the spiritual. We can see things with spiritual eyes. We're seeing the unseen. We're looking at our circumstances a certain way. We're getting answers to some questions in the physical by viewing it through the spiritual. But then that matrix hits us and we're sucked right back in to the physical. It's like the tyranny of the urgent or whatever. And it's so demanding and so overwhelming, and all of a sudden it's all about this physical circumstance I'm in right now, and I can't even think about anything else. How do we get out of that? How do we escape the matrix and get back into that spiritual realm where we can see the unseen and we can process things according to the spiritual paradigm? And I think with I am the door, Jesus is saying he's the link. He's the door in between the paradigms. And every time we go back to Jesus and we feed on the bread of life and we drink the water and we walk in the light and we soak up the light of his glory, we step right back through that door into the right paradigm. When we go back to seeking him first and his kingdom and his righteousness, we're there. When we go back to love your enemies, pray for the people who are making you suffer, we're there. When we go back to don't worry about this life, what you will wear, what you will eat, what you will drink, where you will live, where you will go. Don't worry about tomorrow. When we go back to that, we're there. When we go back to do everything how you would have others, treat everyone how you would have them treat you, we're there. We've stepped right back through that door into the right paradigm. When we invest what we have, when we go back to investing in eternity, we find our heart is there and we long for eternity because we've invested in it. We've invested in relationships. We've invested in people and in God's word, and we're longing for eternity. We're there. And all of these things, all of these principles I've just said, those are all from the Sermon on the Mount. Those are all from Jesus telling us in Matthew 5-7 how to live in the kingdom when you're stuck on planet Earth. That's how you do it. Those are kingdom values. Those are spiritual perspectives and directives. That's how we live in the right paradigm. We live like that. And it's not easy. It's not easy, but it's so worth it. It's so worth it. So when you're stuck in the physical and that matrix has hit you, and somebody's wronged you, and everything in you and your physical is saying, yeah, I'm not going to forgive them. They don't deserve it. They're not even sorry. That's your P. That's your P talking. And what do you need to do? You go back to the S. How do I live in the kingdom? How do I get back to the kingdom, to the spiritual, to view that circumstance with spiritual eyes? Doesn't mean it's going to be easy to forgive them, but it's not impossible. But as long as you're stuck in that P, it's as good as impossible, isn't it? But if we can move back through that door into that right paradigm and see with Jesus' eyes, see with God's eyes what's really going on in the P, we're on our way. We're on our way. So he's a door out, and he's a door in, and he's a revolving door, and he's a door in between. And lastly, he's a door of hope. And I want to read you something from Hosea. And in the book of Hosea, God's addressing his people, Israel. They've betrayed him. And in much of the Old Testament, God's relationship with Israel is depicted as a marriage covenant. And Israel is the wife, and God is the husband. And so when they ran off to worship other gods and to give other gods their devotion and their love and even sacrificing their children to these other gods, that was a betrayal equivalent to a marriage betrayal. And that's how God depicts it. But the thing about God, the thing about our God, the God of Israel, is that he forgives. And he even forgives that. Even that. So in Hosea, he's speaking to his people Israel, and he says, this is from chapter 2, starting in 14. He says, "Therefore I am now going to allure her," Israel, "and lead her into the desert, and speak tenderly to her. And then I will give her her vineyards from there." Another version says, "I will give her back her vineyards. And I will make the valley of Achor a door of hope. And she will sing there as in the days of her youth, as in the day when she came out of the land of Egypt." So he's going to lead her into the desert. He led her out of Egypt, but now he's leading her into the desert, into a desert place, into a wilderness. And in that hard place of trial for her, he's going to restore her. And he's going to give her back her blessing, her vineyards, her identity. And in what he calls the valley of Achor, which means the valley of trouble, and the original audience would have known immediately what that meant, because in their history, Israel got in big trouble with God in the place called the Valley of Achor. When they came across the Jordan with Joshua, there was a big problem. And they were judged and they were disciplined, and that place was called the Valley of Trouble. And God says to them again later in Hosea, "In the valley of trouble, I will make a door of hope." And so I think the picture here for us is so beautiful. And never mind how Israel got to that place. I'm not sure that applies. But I know that some of us here today are in a desert place or in a wilderness. And it feels very much like God led us here. It feels like God led you here. I don't know how long it's going to last. But I want you to know that even in the valley of trouble, there's a door of hope. And whatever this season is about for you, he's there, speaking tenderly to you, seeking to restore you and bless you, to give you hope. And he's the door. In the point of Israel's greatest weakness was when he was strongest. In the point of their failure was his victory. His victory. Not theirs, but his victory. In their desert place was where he blessed them. So if you're in a valley of trouble right now, or a season that feels like a desert place or a wilderness, he's there. And it's a door of hope. You just have to step through it. You just have to step through it and find the bread and the water and the light and the life and the hope. He's there. And when your season is over, whenever that is, you will offer a door of hope to the little lammy behind you that has found herself in a season of wilderness, in a valley of trouble. You can be there for her. to say, even in the valley of trouble, there's a door of hope. That's just our God. He's just that amazing. Even when he leads us there, we're never alone. He's there. And he's our hope. Let's pray. Father, thank you for this day. Thank you that we are on the right side of the door. Thank you that you opened the door for us. Thank you that you led us to it and through it. Thank you that you lead us and that you never leave us alone. And even when you lead us into a valley of trouble, desert, wilderness, we're not without pasture. We still have bread and water and light and life and hope. Give us more faith, God. Give us more faith to see these things, to believe them, to disregard our feelings, and to believe and to act like this is all truth, because it is. Thank you for how you love us. Thank you that you have saved us out of death and into life. I just pray for the coming 2 weeks, for Easter coming up and Passover and all the beautiful pictures of our salvation. Thank you for this special time of year. I pray you would give us all wonderful family time and rest and good study time as well as we come back in 2 weeks. Thank you, Father. You are so good to us. In your name we pray, amen. Does anybody want to keep my visual aids?